Okay, the recording is started, so thank y'all for showing up and welcome to our fourth event, which is another demo debate. This was the most popularly requested event that we were going to do, which is just going to be a KF versus T framework. A lot of y'all wanted to see this, so I hope that y'all really enjoy it. Salma dropped the speech drop link in chat, which will have like the docs for the round if you guys want to flow along, which I highly recommend if you're going to watch a demo debate, you might as well flow it. So the docs will be in there and you can just open it. It's in chat. I'll send it again if anyone just like joined. So yeah. And y'all can go ahead and get started if you're good.
Okay. Let me know. Is anyone not good for the Okay, cool. I'm just gonna read it. Every court case begins with opening statements, but nobody has time for that. Let's skip straight to the witness testimony. Now calling to the stand the International Criminal Court, ICC 24. The ICC investigates the gravest crimes of concern to the international community. That begs the question, what counts as a grave crime? What is of concern to the international community? Does such a thing even exist? And where does it begin? It begins with slavery, the original war crimes charted as Article 23. State building based on slave economy corresponds with state society. Slavery shaped the political. State power was deployed to reproduce slavery was the primary motive of the economy more than market forces. There was no state without concentrated manpower. Without slavery, has all such states were enslaving states. State power was dependent on the slave economy. The taking of captives was the purpose of statecraft. Slavery was crucial to the construction of international networks. Slavery was global, and the deeper sense of polities were tied together through patterns of exchange that underpinned slavery. Expansion and globalization brought polities such as the state relations with each other. It is important for how our polities became dependent on slavery. They had to turn to long distance trade, and with this symbiotic international relationship, reinforced military commercial relations, which could yield into international order. For witness testimony to cross examination, there's only one question of note in this trial. If slavery is so fundamental to global governance, what does the core of the topic teach us about slavery? Exhibit A is the ICC. What can they teach us about slavery? Apparently, slavery is only worth ruling on once it gets really bad. So says the ICC. Cast about 24. The Rome Statute describes conduct of slavery, setting trafficking. Trafficking cannot fill the gaps left by omitting slavery in the Rome Statute. Rome creates a wide impunity gap by omitting the slave trade entirely and including only acts of a sexual nature. The Rome Statute does not enumerate the slave trade or slavery under Article 8 as war crimes. It does not define the slave trade under Article 7 as a crime against humanity. These omissions result in nearly all slave trade perpetrator impunity. The bifurcation of enslavement and sexual slavery leads to discriminatory results. Separate enumeration as a crime against humanity has required victims to prove sexual harms to escape legal characterization. Exhibit B is unglows. Maybe they talk about slavery. They wouldn't create an ocean governance agreement without thinking about slavery, right? Omri and Hudson 23. UNCLOS established rules to govern human activity over the oceans, but neglected as slavery on the oceans with respect to piracy. UNCLOS reinforced and recognized extensive rights of states to eradicate with slavery. However, having committed little, UNCLOS failed to recognize the rights of states to combat slavery and free slaves on board ships. Slavers are enemies of all humankind. Yet the law of the sea champions exclusivity in this regard, providing for limited jurisdiction and powers. Why would such powerful international institutions be designed to be so weak on slavery? Have you not been listening? The gravest crimes of concern to the international community. One was the fate of slaves ever of concern to the international community. There's a reason the witness testimony is missing the words of the oppressed. The colonial infrastructure of IR mandates the erasure of black and brown thought. McDonald's 23. Colonial wars are fought outside recognized boundaries within the aim of sustaining hierarchical relationships of imperial rule. Colonial powers are often confronted by adversaries who they perceive as inferior, which can justify punishment. Settlers exacerbate these dynamics by hardening racial attitudes and unleashing escalating competitions that become genocidal. Colonial powers are more likely to target indigenous adversaries from a different racial background. We underestimate the symbolic role of reinforcing hierarchies, protecting settler privileges. It's embraced as a necessary tool of performative racialized retribution. Most studies focus on European great powers. Colonial powers hide their brutality. British military writers articulated a doctrine of imperial policing centered on gentlemanly restraint. Colonial officials would employ euphemisms. Massacres were redescribed as battles. Rhetorical deflections were not accidental. A final reason colonial bonds is ignored is the testimonies of colonized people who experienced violence firsthand are rarely collected or considered. That model of erasure converges American domestic ideology and international politics. Decisions like Dred Scott prove America is shaped by exclusionary doctrines that inform modern racialized discourse. So, not 21. Not all race talk is neutral. Anti-black rhetoric is often targeted and intentional. Dred Scott, a Missouri slave, was taken to Illinois Free State. This was Scott's suit for his freedom, claimed that his residence in Illinois made him free. The Supreme Court decided that Scott had never had the right to file a suit in the court of law. The majority opinion said a legal precedent, concluding that blacks were, quote, so inferior they have no right to which the white man is bound to respect. This historical monument is significant. Legal precedents like Scott v. Sanford made black rights impossible. Authoritative discourse of power gets taken up by society and iterated in everyday speech. What linguistic scholars refer to as a performative speech act. The task of IR scholarship in the face of these atrocities is to generate energy for black and brown political life. The role of the ballot is to methodologically center resistance to European political thought that necessitates a delegitimization of bureaucratic state focus. Haskell 14. 12 scholarship critiques the state form of international law multitude of a decentralized lawmaking processes indicate that the state is no longer the exclusive participant in the international legal process. Preoccupation with state bureaucracies and powerful international institutions privilege privilege as agents associated with privilege and indirectly excludes marginalized groups whose lived experiences tend to take place outside official state channels. Prioritization on the state tends to hide the internal fractures of the international legal system at the expense of victims of the colonial encounter. Twelve scholarship seeks to undermine Eurocentric modernity to embrace the diverse political movements of the postmodern era. ILAWs perpetuated the European political model of a centralized administrative state as a sole gateway into international legal personality, thereby suppressing indigenous modes of organizing political life and social power. Benevolent initiatives highlighted by the disciplinary mainstream as proof of ILAWs' progressive trajectory perpetuate the white man's burden by shifting responsibility for governance failures to non-European populations that in turn require Western charity. Thus, we affirm we charge genocide as an embrace of the accountability that institutions cannot provide rather than redeeming the state. WCG affirms the resistance of people of color declaring the United States guilty of genocide. Helps 18. The CRC began work on We Charge Genocide. The historic petition to the UN. 92 people added their names. The opening paragraph signals a worldview out of inhuman ghettos of American cities. Complexes of the South comes this record of mass lynchings on the basis of race, lives warped by conditions for premature death, poverty, and disease. It calls aloud for an end to these injustices that constitute genocide. WCG also situated lived experience and exploitation. The conception of genocide in WCG was wider in scope to provide the strongest possible empirical case. So WCG highlighted the economic, social, and mental anguish caused by state-sponsored violence. The CRC located white supremacy in the halls of state power. The anti-black violence of Klansmen was committed by men in court robes and police uniforms as a Jim Crow policy of government. With WCG, the CRC took their critique of anti-black violence further, charging the United States government with genocide. Every utterance matters. The benefit of our analytic is broad and intergenerational, but after connect debate to global struggle helps too. Queen Mother Moore took up the genocide charge explicitly. She anticipated the work the genocide charge could do for black feminism. The BPP made the CRC. The Panthers genocide charge was not militant posturing. The Panthers put emphasis on capital punishment and discussions of black genocide. The BPP also protested sterilization laws. The history of the genocide charge matches the black freedom struggle. The language of genocide conducted several generations of radicals in favor of a globally minded approach for racialized people worldwide. Intergenerational struggles also implies legacies of debate. You should proactively endorse models that enable black and brown struggle and debate. Smith 21. The critique focused model creates epistemological growth incentivized by balance to challenge their understanding of the world. The Louisville Project warns this competition at all costs is dangerous and dehumanizing because we're not thinking about the people we're debating against. Yeah, for to choose a critical perspective and apply it to the resolution, competitors would be railroad across the economy with the ability to apply critical methods to global problems. AF methods must make a good faith effort to be tied to the topic. However, we rethink what it means to debate the resolution. This is a predictable premise linked to the core of the topic. Rapka explain there are debates that don't center around the state but have a lot of clash. No excuse for negative topicality because there are arguments to be had. The critique teams are able to prepare for all of the unpredictable K affirmatives. There's some stable point of departure contextualized by the larger history of debate, a radical stasis point.
Okay, cross-X. Does the AF defend the hypothetical implementation of the resolution by the United States federal government?
No.
Why vote F?
We think that the AF is a good idea.
Okay, let's go to the last card. That's the Smith evidence. It says, under the critique focus model debate, is their burden to choose a critical cultural perspective based at least partially on academic research and applied to the resolution? How do you determine if a debater has adequately applied it to the resolution and if it was at least partially based on academic research?
We think that academic research can be critical if you can highlight a particular part of the resolution and explain why it is critical theory, or maybe just explain why what you have read critiques some part of the resolution, critiques some part of ILAW, etc. We think that that is a sufficient way to determine KFM, but independently, you don't necessarily have to only read KFM. You can read something not necessarily, like you can read a completely topical policy act that doesn't have anything to do with KFM. This model
under KFM
calls for topicality.
Okay, under KFM, can debaters on the negative say you have not applied your theory to the resolution?
Yes.
Okay. Later it says this is a predictable, referring to a militarism K on like the alliances topic. It says this is a predictable controversial premise for critical argument linked to the core of the topic. How do you determine if something is predictable, a controversial premise linked to the core of the topic?
I think that's subjective based on what the topic is necessarily. Sure, this was about a military alliance on a military alliances topic. I think that it depends on what the K is. If you read a K of our particular method, i.e. a K of UNCLOS, a K of ICC, or a K of even mentioning the two, regardless of if we are critiquing them or not, I think that probably solves.
Okay. It later says, quote, competition at all costs is dangerous. Does your model end competition?
No, the model doesn't end competition. The model says that prioritizing competition over everything else, however, is bad. It's not just a quote from Elijah Smith. Rather, it's more so about the Louisville Project and what the Louisville Project has taught us about Black and brown debate. Black and brown debate has actively been a struggle within the space, which is what the Louisville.
Should judges vote based off of the flow?
I'm not really sure what that means.
Like, should judges evaluate arguments based off of like the arguments that are made in the round, or should they be willing to, or should judges be able to insert their own opinions into the round?
We don't think judges should be able to insert their own opinions into the round. It's not a question of necessarily breaking the system. Rather, it's a question of adjusting the current system as is to be better.
Okay, the Dillard-Knox evidence, it says the state is bad and therefore we shouldn't engage with the state. Where does it say the state cannot be good in the future rather than it not just being good in the past?
The Dillard-Knox evidence is rather it's not just a state bad piece of evidence. Rather, it's about how the United States, because the United States is built on a legacy of racist decisions like Dred Scott, it's about how because of those decisions, the United States, those decisions are quite literally irreversible. Sure, Dred Scott was overturned, but that normalization of that rhetoric and that politic itself reproduces itself in current policies that the United States makes. It's not a state irredeemable, it's uniqueness that the United States can't overcome.
Okay, I'm gonna send out the one and see.
Is it the same one you sent me last night?
Yeah.
Okay. Just before that speech happens, I guess I'll ask a couple of questions. So I guess first question, pretty obvious. Does anyone want to explain why Vikrant asked if the AF defends implementation by the US federal government?
To determine if it's a KF?
Yep, basically to see if there's a framework violation, and if there is, then it's a KF and you can read topicality. Yeah. A couple of other questions I had were that one specific question where Vikrant was talking about like some specific lines in the evidence that Salma was reading. What do you think that specific question about like what does it mean for like literature to be critical? Like what is that set up specifically in the round? Anyone have like any ideas why Vikrant might have asked this and what may appear in the 1NC based on the answer to this question? Okay, if no one knows, it's totally okay too. We'll just listen to the 1NC first, and I think more things will be more intuitive after it, and then I'll ask questions after 1NC CX. And yeah.
Okay, it's in the speech drop. The order is one off case position and then the case. I'll just give everyone like a few seconds to get ready. The off-case position is top-tally interpretation in order to develop the affirmative plus legislative topical action. One, resolve the rest legislative instrument, LC 5, legislative instrument use vindicating declaration, state deposits, the term resolve to the United States is only vital to the 10th order meeting. The U.S. mutation to federal government the dictionary are considered with this given our only the Fed 3 auto parts guided action Erickson. 3, each topic contains the U.S. the verb urges action, put a policy into action debate is about off the affirm future action for becoming party 2. Means joining a treaty UN, EFC, and the countries to parties by means of accession, ratification, acceptance, or approval, difference between its formal violation, they defend we charge genocide, cross experience, or not T, and better extra FXT. Pushing back more often, our definitions are vertical, everyone is card critiquing the state or treaties assumes their definition, which proves they could have them, but their opposite is not true. These are a single piece of evidence detailing a solvent terms of resolution. Our conditions not exclude their scholarship once, which I divided into B8, also going to be Green Hill Middle Passage Act, which makes culture that was lost in the middle passage on the negative, they can be central imperialism. And this out straight down is critiquing the ICC, which acts as the best discussion of scholarship because everyone must have the robust defense of the one you see. Here's a card. You close prevents cultural erasure. The articles 149 and 303. Many of these parties place historical remembrance are ahead of seabed exploitation and is the only way to uniformly regulate deep sea activities. Turner et al. 20 close established framework for use and protection of the environmentally natural and cultural resources. Article 149 to all objects of historical nature should be reserved. Article 303 established a duty for historical nature founded. See memorial minimum show respect and motivations, consideration of cultural aspects associated with ocean steep. Step forward towards fulfilling duties, establishing new close potential for discovery of human remains and human work objects 1000 for website to be treated with respect may contain the human remains, smaller objects tabled evidence of the African experience as a metal passage and of a value under Article 149 equals ISA draft exploitation regulations if discovered during mining constructor notify ISA activities within radius these. How can the dead be remembered if many slavery debts are never found? Remembrance, honor, and respect to keeping the past by positions to reminder of those engaged in mining and reminder of the past. Remember the lives lost. Those all nature value the ocean remains is not exclusionary. Understood. Two T not exclusionary. That's the negative. And you not return on top galaxy. Not they must be topical to plan. That means you can be the exact same. Want to see that topical plans once we get the balance zero unfair and not whether we're going to be improving the resolution to 3. Two exclusions possibly exclusion. Critical one sees by losing proper count proves the negative value cannot result in exclusion and appears denied by every round they block against 1 T. And he also relevant violent practice because each time you cast your hand losing key not belong not good enough. With multiple technological balance for content on people, we'd also exclude false cases that have been read in previous conversations such as base fracking the death penalty, but does not mean those types are unimportant should never be discussed. 5 T is not unique. None of their offers are 22 and you realize the same logic disagree. As any other position, DA critiques all dispute the 167 from their electricity 6. Every day linked to them. They've also appeared in other rooms of speech and never let them give it to an argument as more educational, external often as possible, and your mouth cannot solve. The role of the balance code for desirability topic obviously 1. No sensitive issue individual dates are content neutral. Make the manifestation warrant A. All causes friendly. Friends, family, and relation in the next 80 hours. Away B is simply disproven every time they have 1 or log means 1 C is reads the idea of the north because your LC. Blocks speech on people. We lose people internalization as technical error and update or T blocks arguments and virtual beliefs. These which I made structurally solved. We negate what we said on the other side of the president for forming attachments to arguments, inherencies, cultural literature. There are authors looking to make a paper on the one cited them. The one doesn't engage in any new or unique academic production. I have to make none of the reference specific to. You should have a high bar for them. These lines all the teams all the time metaphors on the direction be G line. Teams verifiably incorrect arguments like warmly good, knowing they are scientifically disproven. H. Other round stuff. Each K offers a different version of the topic. When judges watch hundreds of rounds each year, 2 burns. Viewing negative speak competition does not count. Judgment of the truth of arguments themselves. You confirm the one to an individual level of funding. Negative about referendum about who did the better. Rating 3 exposure. Your often premise off the mere exposure. You want to see the wiki email change reading in this round. Authority speech on solid 4 and headings. The trade terms are often the only way people change their minds to nuance and use unpredictability by the interpretation makes that impossible. So the research trying to prove their case concluded or read the claim concluded is false. Why ideal persuasion do not view voting from this having revolutionary potential some material allows because it cannot in its form of hand watching. That may make you feel great aesthetic appearance of action. But explain insufficient combat the material conditions that millions of our daily states economy. The one sees values and its own responding to it with hollow validation. And the valid is a hollow validation siphons on political energy and draws them into the rest of games of the academy. Full-time position can be substituted and investigation and critics activation changes the curriculum is instrumental. One field to offer inadequate or for speaking out of the streets and studying it. In this track without treating it less as a protest and as not treating analysis whether you had to be addressing whether critics should be examining in the first place. Perhaps representation of a solution seen nonetheless the efficacy is constructive and energy the critic is focused on index and rendering comprehensible. They cannot weigh the case of topicality comes prior to one year three, one part watching topicality. Ask whether the reading of the aff was unfair should have been read and anything else we did was reactive abuse to logically ways if we're right that the reading of the aff is unfair, we cannot be held to standard negating it three false positives. Voting affirmative actively related to accept the legitimacy of the law terms to lower the quality of our politics. Vote negative to sustain debate for both sides. One fairness, absent eliminated predictability for the aff is strategic attempt to stray away from the solution with moral truths that makes research impossible, discourages argument innovation, and knows accessibility always competition will only validation of the impact controls every active solves performance in debate. They also rely on fair assessments of research about when to get their own private and heartbeat. In the case, their solves effects and presuppose the game's existence, absent role in negative, nothing distinguishes game from other academic forms. Procedural unfairness is demonstrated of a causal relation to increase academic engagement, knowledge retention, and intellectual humility. Unfairness is correlated with decreases in cynicism, exhaustion, and burnout. British 22 experience of procedural fairness relative to correlate academic efficacy, dedication, and absorption negatively. Correlate exhaustion is cynicism, taking account all dimensions, controlled for all demographics, improvement and procedural fairness, significant positively predicted academic engagement, negatively predicted academic burnout, more likely to accept decision affecting them. Indirect effect of experience of procedural issues with just positive and significant, not significant. Predictor academic burnout, two class, key to argument and refined research, and true testing, debating, unpredictable controversies, or abruptly defend your advocacy and well prepared. Criticism is usually defend the nuance and complexities of treaties until thoughts, better argument, and refinement. Street terms are often solvable. Will be good at presenting ideas will be outmaneuvered in the courtroom. The ability to convince others to persuade your allies and defend the position in constitution is the only way to become better scholars. Debaters and actors Supreme Courts are models. The best way to actualize the affirmative three skills. You got a good position, debaters and judges. As budding social critics will maintain the format of debate. It's game McGee. 97 debaters should understand themselves as social critics and treat practical qualities. While people ever hold a policy making position, all of us grow with criticism, debate, offers. Further criticism, debate is gameplay by students who want to win. Social criticism is not received to lead. Or official criticism, superior and policy, whether articulated by an official or by a mother debate does not feel a solution agenda. Permission to debate this specification makes ignoring the U.S. and impossibility when you not influence the format directly to discuss what the U.S. should do under rather than judges are removed from deliberation. Debaters compare fiction to one another. How else does one explain the plan that did not exist? Guarantee demand plans, be utopian new attitudes and structures. The plans unclean the real world. Debates utopian plan. They counterplan and activist improbable incremental radicals. To be so offensive. It'll be predicate. Debaters use the other should purpose radical changes to inframe talking about policies, not making policy competing interests. One models the course of debate with them, which means for normally always self who suffers which times each of them marketable abuse on to arbitrariness, reasonably arbitrary, no brother, universal consumption, which direction invention, which kills engagement. The club uses often because they say state exclusionary topic law could be example of progress. They have constructed by the theory of analogy is clearly proven by example. The abolition of the board be run by kitchen or dress copy overturned. Even if the state is imperfect, it can be forced for good. They say every other matters don't need about this. Independently using the U.S. Association to plan the north recognize solution makes a human. The individual is one strategy of movements and radicals not work within state or affirm legitimacy demands are made outside the political order. They question its opportunity to state by highlighting inconsistencies. They see critique folks model debate determined by a current debate coach who was debating at the last tournament this topic. It improves competitive incentives because they're citing people who are still invested in the game. Impact running KBK debates one class. Lack of stable basis for competition means every K loses to perm and the advocates re-explain the one seed. Every time what's which would re-explain the advocates only the state or only material. To get any of offense, we do get two real world. State your is more realistic when you read the debate. You have first have to beat the state before deciding what to do after. It's also more ridiculous. You have to defend the United States in plain text. But you can make arguments about the state being good. Three literature. Review mischaracterizes the way state of critical lit works. No one ever says you're wrong about everything, but rather you're wrong about this part. Because the perm solves the next resort to larger structural claims, which are too generic to be handled for limits. Even if you're negative, finally correlates a good K against Newton have low perm. For instance, afterpass. It's hooked by the moment the app discloses new and breaks a new after pessimism affirmative, and there are unifying generics to an unlimited amount of critical methods. Complex.
The fiat stuff, the Erickson evidence doesn't actually say fiat within the evidence. It's just about like saying, oh, to maybe potentially perform a future action. What about debating a policy action guarantees that there would be a fiated action or
Okay.
about me?
even if there's not talk about the say the word fiat. Fiat is to say that we will like implement something. We imagine a future. It says to put a policy into action, which is
Wait,
what.
fiat doesn't mean imagine a future. Like the KF can also imagine a future under your definition of fiat. Fiat just
Yes,
means
the
actually
act can be
ensure that
fiated.
something happens. This just says urges action, put a policy, urges action, or to put a policy, urges to put a policy into an action.
Yes, that is
So
what fiat is. The other definitions are specific to the topic and say what the topic requires.
again, but no, because your interpretation just says in order to win the ballot, the AF must only defend a topical action. What counts as a topical action?
Sure, it has to have the legislative instrument per the resolved definition. It must defend the United States federal government per the ACUDA definition. It must implement a future policy, which is the Erickson evidence, and it must become party to a treaty, one of the two treaties in the resolution, which is the UN ESC evidence.
Sure. Why was your first instinct to just give us the Greenhill anti-blackness AF when you saw this KF?
Sure, your AF says that slavery is the original war crime. Greenhill has read an AF that says we should do something about the
But
legacy
our
of
AF
slavery.
is also specific to modern slavery. Why was your, I guess, first instinct when seeing an AF about modern slavery that also talks about Black and brown people to just say, oh, here's this other AF that also happens to be about Black people? Read it.
Wait, I don't think that's what your evidence says that those modern economies quote based on a slave economy, most infamously slaves from Africa provided the workforce of New World plantations of the
Wait,
antebellum
okay,
U.S.
first
South.
of all,
That is what our evidence.
wait, excuse me. I don't think that's just what the evidence says. I think the evidence is also a critique of UNCLOS and ICC's inability to currently prosecute slavery. What part of reading the Greenhill Act solves any of that?
QPA does not solve every part of the F. It allows for you to discuss those parts of the slave economy which you have critiqued.
Why do you get to pick, or sorry, why does your interpretation get to pick what parts we discuss?
Few things. First, you can still read your F. It just you cannot get the ballot for it. Second is that
Why shouldn't we get the ballot for it?
because you for a couple of reasons. First, you are unfair because you cannot predictably research your topic. Second, because it minimizes clash over topics. For example, even if it would be much better to debate about
So the
recharge
focus
genocide.
of debate should be maximizing clash.
Can you repeat your question? I'm sorry.
The focus of debate should be maximizing clash.
I have not made a claim that it is should be the focus of the debate,
What
but it is
should
an
be the
impact.
focus of debate?
The focus of debate should be to debate about the topic because it is what we've all come here to do.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. No cards. It's just case T. Or unless, wait, actually, Laura, do you want to?
Yeah, I guess before that, we can just like talk about 1 and 2 strategy stuff and also CX. Um, Someone asked who's the bear in the Zoom call. That's Roger. Sorry, that's unrelated to the conversation. But yeah, based on this 1NC, obviously it's set up to go for arguments or go for framework in the 2NR. That's the whole point of the 1NC. I guess for you guys, what do y'all think is the most strategic parts of this 1NC and maybe some parts of the 1NC that could be improved on? Uh, don't feel like shy about volunteering. Just speak out and unmute yourself if you guys have any ideas. Okay. Sorry, we really need some participation, guys. So if no one wants to volunteer, I'll just have to call on someone. Um, Darina, what is one thing you like about Vikrant's 1NC?
What? Oh, um, I like the case page.
Yeah, makes sense. I agree. The
I
case,
also like the case page.
yeah, for sure. This is very strategic, yeah. Why do you think the case page is strategic in this instance, Darina?
Preemptive impact turn of KVK debates.
For sure.
They're
Yes. So that's a great argument that Vikrant has set up in this 1NC. He's preempting this 1AR argument that he thinks Salma is going to make about why KVK debates are good in the 1NC and starting the debate early. Yeah, that's something great that you pointed out. Anyone else have anything that you like about this 1NC or you think could be improved on?
I think Socket wants to participate.
Well, I would love to while I'd love to participate, I just don't really have any feedback now as we've had a lot of great people speak before. But I really appreciate you putting me in the spotlight.
Yeah, that's some great participation. Thank you so much for your contribution. Um, how about um Bolong? You should say something.
I really liked the Aiden Etkin blocks. I think those are pretty strategic.
For sure. Yeah. Um, okay. In that case, we can talk about CX or yeah, actually. We can talk about CX now. So the questions that Salma was asking Vikrant, first about if y'all were paying attention, the question about Erickson, which is basically like a definition card for what ought means in the context of fiat. Why do you think this question was asked, and why do you think it might have been asked, and what argument do you think might be in the one error because of it? How about Nilesh answer this one? All right, if Nilesh isn't gonna answer, how about Bert? Do you want to take a shot at this? This is some really great participation, guys. Okay, if no one wants to answer this specific question, what are y'all's thoughts on the CX generally? You can have any comments. What do you like about it? What did you not like about it? What arguments do you think are going to be set up by this CX and the 1AR, etc.? Just anyone can volunteer.
I think Nilesh, so he just sent something in the chat. I think this is a really valuable contribution. Oh, actually, so you said that the cross-sex was fantastic. Do you have something that you particularly enjoyed about the cross-sex that you thought was smart on Salma's end?
Yeah, Nilesh, can you name something specific about the CX? Like less broadly, more so like, did you like a specific question? Did you like a specific answer? Okay, thank you so much for the answer about it being ethosy. Yeah, for sure. I think that although it sounds kind of silly in a lot of debate contexts, it's very important to be ethosy on both sides. It can maybe win you the ballot sometimes. Thanks everyone for those comments. Yeah. Um, anything else at all? Okay, a lot of people agree with Nilesh. That's good. Okay. How about before this one era starts, you guys make sure you're paying attention to the arguments made, try to flow this one era, and then I'll ask questions again before the two and R, and try to formulate what you guys think would be an ideal two and R versus this one era. Yeah. And you can go ahead, Salma.
Okay, awesome. International institutions whitewash racialized genocide. The ICC and UNCLOS deliberately exclude slavery because it represents the genesis of state violence. But after endorse we charge genocide, a model public declaration that holds institutions accountable. Presumption helps to answers presumption. Utterance matters because of the generational effect of affirming the analytic of WCG. Intergenerationally using a phrase like genocide to describe American governmentalities, necessary for being able to inspire future leaders to take the violence that happens to Black and Brown people seriously. It's all about contributions to modern and future politics as well, which is the vision to be offense. The KVK impact turn. This was written in the context of the Louisville debate. It doesn't matter if Smith is still in debate clash when there's no warrant for why every K loses the perfect half. There are infinite Ks and infinite advocacies that complain to race planning. The advocacy is not unique. Three only us also happens to play focus debates about self. None of these arguments are unique to KVK. Real world one, the perception that state rev is more realistic. It's what the app critiques, i.e. the logic that the state is the only possible actor that's capable of ILO conversation. Predictability will be on framework literature, and one non-unique can be specific to app Longwood limits. When you're reading of the Phillips evidence as an example of a unified generic table turn approved general lit that critiques the way critical lit is read. Hugh Smith solves the past example T framework. Our debates are marked by colonial capture. The only ethical response is to address models that recuperate block talk about agency refers to the racialized attribution to that framework embodies colonial violence. The debate coloniality operates by framing efforts of thought as inferior and demanding punishment and response, which is a McDonald framework does this by calling on you to enforce norms through punishment. It's informed by history. Their model is built on a legacy of violence that has pushed Black and brown scholars over decades out of debate over decades, which in turn linked with every benefit of debate, including class, and is the internal link that they've not answered in the Smith evidence. Second is Eurocentrism. Just how they draw an explicit trade-off argument framing the state is key to our politics, suppresses indigenous modes of political life. Beth Haskell and McDonald say state first models are only coherent because they ignore colonized subjects, which is why the topic avoids slavery. That also turns TV its which side both impact is applied, making the state the center of the topic. Their model from colonized thought is reactionary, which choose Black and brown people's objects of state desire. The one he defends a competing model of debate. The critique focus model solves like offense. That's split 21. Kif and mandates asked about a unified method grounded in the topic that solves the predictable limits of the topic, and the atomic mandates and the functional limits on infinite absolute pushing out critical exploration. Unified method part solves class apps can't defend just defend a theory powered with what Smith calls radical stasis point. Also drop that her model is predictable. It's quote contextualized by the larger history of debate. British as an answer to all procedurals bad. Again, not an argument. The evidence would not disagree with the claim about procedurals can be improved, which is the KFM model McGee 97. Even if they think fiat actions are good, their interim doesn't mandate that the topical policy action is fiated, which means voting that doesn't solve. Read through their entire interpreter to say fiated policy action appears once in the tag of Erickson, but nowhere in the definition, which means people could just talk about a policy action, choose not to use fiat. Fairness, but the answers explicitly. A drop the competition theory and I emphasizing the game produces provocatorial bias. B about to incentivize students to challenge their worldview, so you should orient your battle away from models to reduce it to games. Here are oftentimes ways it produces rigorous testing that encourages application of critical thought. They draw racial linguistics affect social relations, which is still not which proves debate affects subjectivity. It means only we have external offense cross-apply this to also no subjectivity change the NC. Their offense accessibility is unwarranted. Is the use of the courtroom analogy also concedes that what we do in here matters out there, which is the reason why you should commit to reorienting our politics. One is the eternal evidence. One asserting that an institution has some cultural value doesn't deny that still takes faith action. At best, it's performative activism. Three, the card is about rediscovering parts of the middle passage. The F is a K of unclose on the ICC's ability to prosecute modern slavery. The GBA proper one, CKF, and telling us to read a generic anti-blackness have its textbook racism. BOC scholarship is diverse, and to the F is an impact to the topic. Reading topical advocacy is uniquely harmful because it normalizes glorifying discussions of international institutions that are blatantly racist. Three, Diller Knox's impact turn is United States government actions. This is like just got proved government actions always structured towards anti-blackness. SSD was above crossed by the turn non-T non-exclusionary. Our argument is not that all readings of T framework are exclusionary, but that your reading of T within this round against this after presents a counter model is rejoinder cross-apply Smith exclusion possible. Wrong one. It's not about excluding chaos from the space, but about patterns of excluding POC research. To this argument assumes that we made a claim about not voting for us as violent, which is wrong. It's about your performance cross-apply the web content on people when your inter can be universalizable, and exclusionary is about POC inclusion, which is uniquely aired out by your interpretation. Norm stuff one adhering to speech size is not a diss. There are still actions that the scholarship endorses to be heard in the first place. It's not about breaking the system, it's about adjusting it, which was cross one C1 and A cross-apply subjectivity to norms for the logicalists. These are assertions, not arguments. One and CB, it's not about changing norms, but about not rewarding you for bad practices. C, irrelevant if you personally change. But within this round, there's a competing model of debate you have not answered, and you personally should not be rewarded for your actions. DCS, SSD was answered above. E1 says it already exists as an offensive reason for why we shouldn't talk about it. Topical asks are also reproduction of knowledge already exists. There's no impact. F. Smith and Diller Knox are specific to debate. G, you are all solve if you think my evidence is miscut. Take the round. H, other rounds prove we are able to be engaged with and to enough for politics while voting. That doesn't have a warrant for the Smith model, which means the judge can also agree to is good and vote off. The offense is premise on future policy influence, which was presumption, and 4 absolutencies and contingent on people changing their minds. That was above 5. The offense made no claims about revolutionary potential, and there's no warrant by the app is insufficient, no true in our arguments. If those K is a K of seeking validation, which doesn't link to the app.
Okay, as Vikrant is taking prep, sorry if this is like kind of distracting, Vikrant, you can just like turn off the audio. Let's talk about this 1AR. A lot of you guys were making a lot of comments in chat, so I think y'all have a lot of energy to talk about this 1AR. Ronald, what is one thing that you liked about this 1AR?
I didn't really flow this 1AR, but I think racism is bad.
Okay. Um, how do you, I guess, yeah, what argument specifically in this 1AR persuaded you, or like obviously racism is bad, but what argument in this 1AR persuaded you to think that this was a good speech specifically?
Wait, let me think about that for a second.
Okay. I'll get back to you in a bit. How about Vic Mon? What did you think about this one? Yeah, what did you think about this 1AR, Vic? Okay, does anyone first of all want to volunteer to talk about this 1AR? Because like genuinely, on like a real note, I think that there are some very, very good things about this 1AR, and I think that it's worthwhile to discuss because it very much interacts with what the 2NR will be.
I think
Um,
the argument, sorry, the
oh no.
argument that's like T is like a form of rejoinder is like interesting. I haven't like heard of that before.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Thank you for pointing that out. It's like something that, maybe not everyone has heard of before, and It can make its way into the two error, and I think it's pretty persuasive. Nilesh said that I like that the one error had a good combination of impact turns and counter interp and covered a large 1NC as well. Yeah, that's actually, thank you so much for pointing that out, Nilesh, and being serious about this. What do y'all think is the strategic incentive for having a one error that not only has impact turns, but also has arguments in the context of the counter interp, the definitions debate, etc.? Like, what is the reason for a one error that diversifies arguments like this? Does anyone have any idea? Or if not, Nilesh, why do you think that's strategic? Exactly what Chu Ping said. It's exactly the point of it. You're not pigeonholing yourself when you're defending a KF to exactly one 2AR. Diversifying your 1AR arguments means that a 2AR can potentially be, something about the counter interp and having disads underneath that model, but also something about impact turns. So you have more opportunity for 2NR mistakes and to have a different path in the 2AR. Someone else said, I thought it was really smart that Salma indicated only the next T-shell as bad was good. Sorry, can you clarify what you mean by that? You can just unmute if it's like easier.
Like I just thought that like her saying that T's alright in other scenarios, but specifically Vikrant's T shell was bad. I thought it was pretty neat.
Yeah, for sure. So, maybe it's not like a generic argument about why T in all instances is bad, but why in this specific instance is something that we shouldn't evaluate. Yeah, that's something great to point out because it's very specific, and maybe that'll set up Soma's 2 error to be like a very nuanced and more specific analysis of why T as a model of debate is bad. Um, Anyone else have any thoughts? I hate to call on y'all, but like maybe Selena, Dorina, etc. Or Aiden Ek says that I think the one year was able to strategically leverage the fact that the one NC spent more time on framework and less on case. Yeah, that's something that's very good to point out. This one and see in the context of like this demo debate is obviously intended to go for framework in the 2NR, but I think it's very true that the one error took advantage of this and was like, yeah, the one and C didn't spend much time on case. It just read basically framework arguments and preamps. So efficiency is good on the case page. Yeah, for sure. Anyone have any other ideas? There are many impersonators I see. Um, Hate to call on y'all again, but um, what did you like about this 1AR? Or actually, I guess a better question is based on this 1AR, what was something that you think that maybe could have been improved on, and what do you think the 2NR might take advantage of?
I thought the one air was fine, but I think well, just because there's so many different warrants for why I guess debate doesn't shape subjectivity, the 2R might blow one of them up, but I thought the one air did a good job of covering them, but the 2R can probably just like um expand on one for like a minute or something. So that might be something Vikrant does.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for pointing that out as well. Um, I think that's very true, and I totally agree with it. The one air had great coverage, but maybe like something on subjectivity will be blown up in the two NR because it wasn't covered like incredibly much by the one AR. Anyone else have any ideas on what the two NR might go for? Well, like obviously the two NR is going for framework, but like specific arguments underneath framework. Um,
I, I don't think that there's like a particularly good response to like read and lose. So I think that's going to be a pretty heavy portion of the 2NR, especially considering that, it's also a pretty heavy portion of Aiden's block file.
um, yeah, sorry, it's really funny. Yeah, I think that the one you're on read it and lose is like, it responds to it and it's fine, but maybe not like as super adequately based on like how big the one and C was on it. So Vikrant might blow it up in the 2NR for sure. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Vikrant, whenever you're ready. Yeah.
Okay, I'm good. Um, okay. Also, Salma, are you good? Okay, cool. Vote negative for fairness. One competition, even if debate is pedagogical, it's still a game. One side wins, the other side loses. They subscribe to this model. Speech time, taking sessions of truth selectively, highlighting cards, answering cross-sects, and preferring judges to maximize the chance of winning. They too request the ballot above balls, which they've dropped. They would not opt for a claim flip, not for ballot for discussion. Which proves it's paradoxical to reject fairness since arguments require fair evaluation outweighs the ballot neither a counter nor the counter remedies their impact, but can't offset a fair self-violation. Two, burnout. They've dropped it. They may when the model excludes certain aspects, but theirs physically excludes all debaters. Controlled studies proves unfairness increases the rate of burnout and cynicism. That's where debaters have more obligations to debate, schoolwork, family, and ECs, direct lasting impact. And flip uniqueness independently. Policy debates are good and turns all their offenses. Force debaters to develop information literacy and become self-efficient, which is vital to information age. Anything else sees the political to the right wing and create positive cynical disengagement, making their method unable to actualize that's some evidence. They say there are enter pushes colonial bounds under. They have dropped the Newman evidence. It says that using the state does not legitimize its existence. The Newman says that because activists repeatedly put its demands on the state and criticize the state for not implementing the plan. I.e., when we say that the inherency burden of the tropical policy absence the plan would never happen in the real world, which is the McGee evidence, which means that people that defending top glass makes us infuriated with the state for not implementing a good policy. They also drop the links back to them because their interpretation also allows for a policy for affs, which means they can't solve for any of it. Because even if you will be the KF, Harker certainly will not because they have a longer profile. They say it's built on a legacy of exclusion. It's built on a legacy of exclusion. They've dropped multiple warrants for exclusion is impossible. First is that blockchain on people. We're going for the double line argument. Debate isn't inherently competitive. They have dropped that everything we do is filtered through fairness because you two also want the ballot, which means that when we lose, it will not change what we actually think about debate, but rather will cause us to believe that we are block files run long enough and means that we are more likely to write it. We have to negate both sides of the topic. Their interpretation also requires that affirmatives negatives have to negate the topic through technical concessions on the flow, which means that there's no reason why people change their minds based on the topic. They say they turn clash because they could clash over something better, but debate is content neutral. That's the McGee evidence. Since we have to debate about both sides, which will be explained later. They say state versus Eurocentric state first and forces Eurocentric logic. Switch side debate solves. It was dropped by the 1 year. You know that even if because even if it is true that the state is racist, that you can just read it as a critique on the neg, which is the ICC, or you can read this app as a reason why the ICC or Union Close are bad. Union Close is bad. If their argument is that you have to be racist 50% of the time, you should ask yourself what the role for the negative looks like under their model of debate, because the inevitable neg ground will just be ICC good, which recreates all of their models of state good anyway, which means it links back to them independently. TVA also solves because you can read the Green Hill slavery app. Look, even if it's not perfect, the point of debate is critical contestation. We have chosen the topic beforehand. And it allows for us to access discussions of slavery. You should also read their evidence after the round. It says that slavery in the middle passage is the foundation of modern state building, which is something they have criticized, which means the topic lab is good, even if it's not solved for all of their offense. It's certainly not racist. They say it's still about the topic. It's not predictable and it's not based on any literature. Should be explained below. They say it is just by sheer essentialism answered above. They say Smith solves ground and etc. There's no explanation for how it solves. They have no interpretation of the topic, which means the critique focus and model of debate is entirely unpredictable. They have no explanation of how debaters can prove that they're a KF is sufficiently in the resolution, which means either the T framework still exists under their model of debate, or which links back to all their DAs, or the topic is literally unlimited, which means that the topic is literally unlimited because there's no way for you to actually determine what close enough the literature is. I.e., Harker says right to housing is related to Uniclose because houses can be flooded with water and Uniclose relates to that, which means that every past topic is also brought back, any identity KF, etc. AfroPest says that the state is always bad, which means the AfroPest app is also back in the topic, which means that there's no predictable limit to solve. They say that we have to contextualize based on the specific affirmative. No, can't solve because there's infinite potential with KFs, which is the skill, which is the new apps argument on the case page when we said that even if it is true that KFs are even if AfroPest IE could link to every app, the moment that I want to see breaks a new AfroPest app, there's no predictable generic to every app proven by when they said in the cave there's millions of methods for prove argument. They say McKee not about fiat, not going for skills, and it's irrelevant. They say competition first is bad. Their interpretation is still lost for competition. They've dropped, but they care about fairness too, and will always win for the battle. They have no explanation of how their interpretation gets rid of fairness, being such self to fairly evaluate arguments, i.e., under their model debate, people can still go for skep versus KF, say racism doesn't matter, and the better way to resolve that is for the judge to intervene and to not vote for racist arguments. Anything else for second litigation, which is bad. They say our interpretation tells critical lots. You can read it and lose, basically drop by the 1 year, because even if you think that racism, because there's no reason why you need the ballot to care about critical thought. Also, no subjectivity shift was explained earlier. They just grouped all of our arguments. No specific warrants for why subjectivity dropped. It's purely disproven because they have lost this round multiple times at Emory every tournament this year. And even if they have read, even if their Spizats can have micro loss chances, they dropped it. Every other K team reads different critical loss, which means that the other debaters won't change. They say accessibly unwarranted, not going fairness causes it, which is we've heard group studies which prove it. Basically, courtroom proves spillover. No, it doesn't. Individual debates cannot change subjectivity, even if the broader model debate. Then again, they say TVA is about the past, not our argument. Because not the even if it's not perfectly solved, it can still explain something, which is what they say. Our reading, it's racist. At worst, reject the argument of the team. Drop the comes before T comes before 1 or 3 because it's a probably question which actually been read. They say topical F still link because it's topical F still link, but no, because it criticizes this because topical F criticizes state for not doing. They say government this can never get better. Drop that multiple examples why the government can get better. Which was on case like the abolition of slavery. They say that. So they say that I was specifically exclusionary within the debate. No, our their information still allows for T, which means they cannot resolve any of this by voting affirmative. But regardless, even if I was racist, but voting if I can't solve it, but he can't solve a fairness violation. They say they uniquely exclude them. Also explained above for why it's not exclusionary because they can still read their app and lose. They say norms, voting for norms is bad. Norms is bad because it causes racism. Explained above why cannot exclude their scholarship because because anything else causes antagonism where when you call us racist, we'll just research more on how to beat your arguments instead of trying changing our minds. They say topical apps are bad. Topical apps are bad because they allow for racism. Explained above. T is not a valid form of rejoinder. Last argument that the judges can vote neg and still agree with the judge can still think that it's unfair, but then vote app anyway. Illogical because the reason why you would read and lose is because you can resolve a fairness violation, but you cannot resolve fairness by voting F, which means it cannot solve any of our impacts.
Okay.
Laura, I'm just gonna like mute the volume if that's cool.
Oh yeah, of course, because it's probably a little bit distracting. Yeah, totally fine. Okay. Before the 2 hours starts, since she's having prep time, thoughts on the 2 and R? Anyone just like generally, again, like what did you like? Maybe what was something that you thought could improve on, etc. If no one wants to volunteer, I'll go first. I thought the 2 NR was very efficient. It made a lot of arguments on the line by line, covered everything in the 1 AR. Didn't, at least I didn't think it dropped anything. It was very efficient and like fast paced in a good way. Anyone else want to go? We should go around the circle, everyone. Um, how about, okay, Nilesh, thank you so much for volunteering. I thought the 2 NR picked and chose the right arguments instead of trying to answer everything in the 1 AR. Yeah, for sure. So the 2 NR was very efficient. It did answer everything in the 1 AR, but not in like the context that it took every 1 AR argument and line by lined it and put like 5 responses on it, but more so it picked and chose a couple of arguments to sit on in the 2 NR and explain why like their offense turns the affs offense and strategically did that for sure. Thank you for that comment, Nilesh. Um, I guess why do you think that choosing to go for like fairness specifically in this 2 NR was strategic? Nilesh or anyone else can answer. Um, sorry for calling on y'all, but how about Selena? Why do you think that Vikrant went for fairness?
I wasn't listening very carefully, but I think it's because there were some arguments that were, well, they were answered, but they weren't like covered the greatest. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, people choose arguments that are like underdeveloped in the 1 AR and answers to it. So yeah, that totally makes sense. Ohm said fairness is always strategic, plus the neg has tricks like read it and lose to set up the fairness tuner. Yeah, for sure. Totally agree with it. Um, oh, okay. Totally agree with that. It's not just like reading an overview about why fairness outweighs, but implicating it on the line by line, extending tricks from the 1NC that weren't answered incredibly well, like read it and lose, for example, and implicating that on, the flow and why fairness outweighs. Sachin, I don't know if this is actually Sachin, but Sachin said the neg should have gone. Okay, never mind. It's definitely not. Fairness is the only impact solved by the ballot. Both sides rely on fair adjudication. Although I feel like the 2 could have been more efficient on the line by line, since he just reiterates himself a lot, but very good speech. Yeah, thank you so much for like being not afraid to like say words of criticism. I thought the tuner was very good as well. I agree, maybe some parts of it could have been a tiny bit less repetitive, but I feel like that's a little bit inevitable in framework debates. But yeah, totally great for pointing that out. Uh, yeah, thanks, Jack. I thought the tuner was gas as well. Based on this tuner, I guess, and based on the 1 AR and the tuner, what what do y'all think that the 2 AR will go for? Like which piece of offense if you guys were flowing? And how do you think, or like also what piece of defense would the 2 AR extend to fairness? The app should go for the argument that topicality is racist. Um, Yeah, that's definitely a 2 AR, and it was very much well sat on in the 1 AR. Nilesh or why do you think that that should be the 2 AR specifically? Do you think it can outframe fairness in some way, or do you just think that it's more so a persuasive argument? Yeah, I agree. I think Nilesh should take the lead on this. Or how about Bert? What do you think the 2 AR should be? The truest arguments are the easiest to win on the technical level. Yeah, that is in fact true. Um, I think framework is a racist microaggression. Okay. Thanks, Bert. Um, do you think that, that should be part of the 2 AR and why? Um, yeah, anyone sh can volunteer. How about Chu Ping? You give comments about the 2 AR or what you think that the 2 AR should be.
I'm not a professional at this. That's why I joined the meeting, but uh I'll just say like one part of my flow. Frick. Let me see. He basically line by line a lot of stuff, and then he emphasizes fairness a ton of times, which is probably strategic.
Yeah, for sure. Fairness was obviously the central theme of the 2 R. It was implicated on basically every piece of offense for sure. So that's something great about the 2 R. So I see that everyone has explained why the 2 R is really good on the fairness page. In that context, what do you think the 2 AR should do to beat back fairness? What arguments do you think that maybe the 2 R didn't handle super, super well and that the 2 AR should go for? Roger, not Sachin, said that I think fairness is not an impact as it does not prove the truth or falsity of the resolution. Okay. Um, thanks for that contribution. Um, someone said we should copy Westwood's framework blocks. Thanks for that contribution as well. Sorry, Chupeng, did you want to say something? I saw you
Oh, I
unmute.
just had a question. Is switch side debate offense or defense?
Um, I guess we can talk about that after the 2 AR is over. And Salma and Vikrant can give y'all more in-depth thoughts on that. But that's a great question. Yeah. Um, anyone else have any final thoughts before the 2 AR begins on what it might extend as offense and defense? Okay. If not, Salma, you should go ahead and give the 2 AR whenever you're ready, and then we can talk about it after. Yeah.
Cool. I think order is pretty obvious, but it's case T. Okay. International institutions whitewash racialized genocide. The ICC and UNCLOS deliberately excludes slavery because it represents the genesis of state violence. You should have to endorse be charged genocide because it's a model of public declaration that is able to hold these institutions accountable. The Newman evidence is relevant in the light of Gillard Knox, which says that the state is always structural towards anti-black rhetoric. That was in the 1 AR. It says that no matter what, even if we use a state, even if you think that the state can possibly be good in the future, it doesn't matter because state actions in the past are the only metric we have for recognizing that the state actions are always going to be structured towards anti-blackness, which is a reason as to why we charge genocide is necessary because it forms into institutions that are outside of whitewashed, racialized international institutions, which is independently bad considering they conceded all of cases. This means this impact is 100%. This means that this is 100% true and has 100% risk of happening, which means that you err off on this question. T. The KFM model was handled terribly. Smith is the Cree solvency for everything. They dropped the competition theory indictment because emphasizing the game is what produces broader rhetorical violence, which is what's going to give us the internal link to the impact turn. But they also conceded that balance incentivizes students to challenge their worldview, so you should orient your ballot away from models that reduce that to a game. Independently, even if you do think that even if you do think that it's not about a subjectivity change board, they conceded that we don't care about subjectivity change. Rather, we care about Vikrant not being rewarded for a particularly violent model of debate. They conceded that our office outweighs because it produces rigorous testing that encourages application of critical thought. I'm going to be slow and clear here. They dropped that racial linguistics affect social relations, which was the Dillard-Knox evidence. I'm literally reading off of a block from the 1AR. This is a complete subjectivity change board, and it's also the reason why racialized discourse is always present, which seeps into schools, family, etc., and burnout. It means it's overcoded by it, which is the reason as to why the subjectivity change board that Vikrant went for was just the wrong one. But independently, the Dillard-Knox part proves to be affects subjectivity. It means we only have external offense, which is the cross apply to all no subjectivity change. In the NC, they only extended one word for no subjectivity change board, which we have just turned. And independently, it doesn't matter. They've conceded that our debates are marked by colonial capture, and the only ethical response is to endorse models that recuperate black and brown agency. Any risk that they don't is enough to vote AF. So risk of an impact turn to solve it. They essentially conceded the words of two impact turns. We're going to go for the racialized retribution dissad is often proper and cross-apply the Eurocentrism dissad to why they think TVA and SSD are good versus the racialized retribution dissad framework embodies colonial bots and debate coloniality operates by framing adversarial thought as inferior, demanding punishment and response. That's McDonald's framework does this by calling on you to enforce norms through punishment. It's informed by history. Their model is built on legacy of violence that has pushed out black and brown scholars over decades, which internally turns every benefit of debate, including clash. But they've also conceded that the KFM model does put a limit on infinite apps, which means there's no predictable limit. There's no predictable limit to impact, and it also means that it mitigates their clash impact, which means the risk of an impact turn outweighs the SSD and TVA. Independently, SSD was not conceded. They have dropped the Eurocentrism dissad, which is not only an answer to SSD, but an active reason why their interpretation of SSD is uniquely harmful. They dropped the trade-off argument, which says that both impact turns apply to making the state the center of the topic, but their model frames colonized thought as reactionary and treats black and brown people as objects of state desire, which is what Haskell calls Western charity, which is the reason why not just, quote, reading Seckle solves, even if you don't think that it's irrelevant if we personally change substitutes within this round, there's a competing model of debate you have not answered, and you personally should not be rewarded for your actions. The impact turn outweighs. It was practically conceded, and independently, they have conceded that the KFM model solves literally every single indict that they have went for. Good debate.
Good debate. I think Laura can ask some people some questions about this round because it was a good debate.
Yeah, for sure. So I thought this was a great debate, and I hope that y'all thought so too. I guess before we start talking about like the RFDs and stuff, what comments do y'all have about like the debate in general, and what questions do you guys have if you have any? Like clarification questions, questions about literally anything related to this debate. Go ahead and ask away.
How would you jurisdict the I guess the racialized retribution stuff and like the subjectivity shift versus like in-round fairness? I wasn't sure um how, on a technical level that would work.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess a lot of debates and framework debates come down to like these impacts, so sort of like more proximate impacts about like racialized violence, etc., and opposed to fairness. This is what a lot of debates boil down to. I guess it's up to debaters a lot to do a lot of the judge instruction in why their impact matters more. I think Vikrant's 2NR was like a lot of stuff on like ballot proximity, for example, why even if you think that their impacts matter a lot, your ballot can't rectify them because it can only solve a fairness violation. So sometimes debates can be adjudicated on things like that, like whether or not your ballot can actually do anything about it, versus, Salma's impacts are much more bigger and broader impacts. And I think the K debater typically in these debates will argue about like why, certain things, certain models of debate are like explicitly violent for XYZ reason, even if it preserves a game of fairness, that game is violent, so we should reject it in all instances. So it's up to the debaters to kind of do the judge instruction and to deflate each other's arguments through defense, like read it and lose, for example, and just up to you guys to evaluate it. So I guess sorry, that's a little bit rambly, but there's no like one answer to adjudicating these types of debates, but it's just about how you're instructed to do so, and by the end of the debate, who you're more persuaded by based on like offense and defense won. Um, Anyone else have comments or like questions at all? I know Chu Ping, you said, or actually, sorry, I just saw someone unmuted. Go ahead.
Can you like re-explain the 1AR?
Salma, go ahead if you want to. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so the 1AR starts with an extension of case and just kind of answering just kind of answering all of the arguments that Vikrant made on case, which is just like this wasn't an argument on case, this was embedded in the T shell, but I just handled presumption on case, the impact turn to KVK debates I did here. Then I went to the T framework page and I started with my offense and then I went to the line by line, which is first starts with like the cards of the NC just because I feel like those are particularly important not to drop considering it's like carded reasons about like I'm pretty sure it's like fiat and other impacts, and then answered fairness, and then went down just like if you see the doc, it says like one NC1 or like it says like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and at some point it goes into letters like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And so you might have heard me say like one NCG, one NCH, etc. Those were just all answers to like just all line by line answers to Vikrant stuff. If you have any questions about like a specific answer, I'd be happy to answer it.
Oh, wait, can you like go over like some of the responses to T?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so to T framework, I first was just like a uniqueness argument about how the AF sees IR debates. So the AF kind of sits on this argument that IR debates are marked by colonial capture because the history of international relations is intertwined with colonialism. Then the AF makes two arguments about well, the two impact turns rather that are pieces of offense that you want to go for. First, the racialized retribution dissad, and second, the Eurocentrism dissad. And then we go for how the 1AC defends a competing. Oh, Laura, I think there's a comment in the chat for you. The 1AC defends a competing model of debate, and then it just goes to line by line.
Okay, thanks.
I think Angelina has a question, or like has a comment. Would you like to go ahead?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you're muted.
Sorry. What's your favorite answer to fairness?
Is that Angelina?
No, it's Judy.
Oh, hi. My favorite answer to like my personal favorite answer to fairness is hold on.
Wait, and also how to answer the fairness paradox. So sorry, those were our two questions.
Oh, cool, of course. A couple of things. For my favorite answer to fairness, I didn't do it with this app because this app is just not set up for that. But sometimes I just like impact turn fairness and just go for like fairness, unfairness, good, which I think does lose to the fairness paradox. I think the fairness paradox is actually probably true. The fairness paradox, my favorite answer to the fairness paradox is okay, thank you, Alex. I do think my favorite answer to the fairness paradox is probably it's not about dismantling the system. This was made in the 1AR. It's not about dismantling the system writ large, but it's about adjusting the system. So even if we do you think some semblance of fairness is good or following speech times is good, it's more about like, okay, there are certain things that people have to do in the space to be listened to in the first place. We think that we can adhere to some of those things, but at the same time critique other parts of that system as violent.
Thank you so much. And also, do you think that the racism paradox is a good answer to the fairness paradox? I saw a lot of good debaters do it on YouTube.
Can I actually say something about that? Just a sec. I actually think the fairness paradox is like incorrect, ironically, but like it's true as in like it proves that both sides care about fairness, but like I think something that Salma was talking about is that it doesn't prove that fairness outweighs, just that both sides care about fairness.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Not necessarily that it's a true argument. Vikrant is right about that.
It's also like why like racism paradox equally true to fairness paradox. We both agree fairness and racism are impacts. So it's a question of like specific impact health between the two impacts. Like I think racism paradox is a good way of explaining to judges why fairness paradox doesn't prove fairness outweighs.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Someone said, how is the paradox not true? If both sides care about it, then that means fairness must precede the content of speeches. That's a great response for like the framework debate or the debater who's going for framework. But I think like the argument that Vikrant and Salma are saying is that, yeah, both debaters do care about it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it matters or supersedes everything else. Like, same thing with the racism paradox, right? This argument equally applies to it. Um, what's the racism paradox? It's like the fairness paradox in reverse, like it's just like replace the word fairness with racism, basically. Like, both sides don't like racism, so it should be like, what you evaluate first. Yeah.
You wouldn't want the judge to be
Yeah,
racist.
you wouldn't want the judge to be racist. Sorry, that's a better way to frame it. Like you wouldn't want, so like fairness paradox, people frame it like you wouldn't want the judge to hack against you. So obviously you innately care about fairness. Same thing with the racism paradox. You wouldn't want the judge to be racist, so you should care about it over everything else. Um, does anyone have any other questions, like actual questions? Yeah. Okay, if not, uh, would anyone like to volunteer to give like a quick RFD? Who do y'all think won this debate and why? Or just like if you don't feel comfortable giving an RFD, just like comments if for what you liked, what you thought could be improved on, etc. I know it's a little bit repetitive, but I think that formulating these reasons for decisions are pretty valuable in like how you think about debate rounds. Yeah, I'll upload it to YouTube after this is over on our PepTalk channel, so you can definitely access it there if you want to rewatch it. Someone asked, what does it mean not to rejoin non-topical advocacies? So that's a good question. I know everyone's leaving, but I'll still answer it. So, in debate, like the AF has the burden of proof and the neg has the burden of rejoinder. So when you rejoin something, you have to disprove it by proving that there's like a competitive opportunity cost that's better, or just a reason not to do it because of XYZ reason. So the burden of rejoinder is just like disproving it in some way and proving that you have an alternative competitive opportunity cost that's better. And the interp that a lot of debaters read is like, we don't have to rejoin the AF if it's non-topical, so you don't have to negate it basically or effectively like disprove it in any way. It's just like the framework interp. Yeah. Anyone else have any last minute questions or comments at all? It's okay if y'all don't want to give an RFD, but just anything, feel free to stay and ask.
Wait, what was the response to limits again?
Selma, if you want to take that.
Is that for me? Okay, sorry. The limits response is just a cross application of KFM, which is just like KFM does put a limit in on the amount of apps that can be read because it sets certain requirements on what apps have to meet, which means that there aren't an unpredictable amount of apps that are gonna happen, that are gonna end up happening.
Wait, what's KFM?
Critique focus model, the Smith evidence.
Anyone have anything else at all? If not, we can go ahead and end the meeting, but feel free to ask and don't be scared to ask if you do. Okay, if not, thank you all so much for coming. If you have any questions that you come up with later, feel free to message one of us, either Salma, Vikrant, or me, just about anything about this debate or in general. And the recording will also be on YouTube. And thank you all again for coming. Have a good day.
Bye.